Hey there. Can you hear
Hey,
me?
I hear you.
Awesome. So let's give it a second to let people trickle in.
Okay, I'm just gonna move my camera up a little bit. One
Okay.
sec.
Quite the bookshelf you have behind you.
Yeah, I was just gonna do the background of my normal wall, but this feels like a little bit more apropos.
Of course.
One second. Where are you today, Sarah?
I am in a place that you might know well. So I am in
Uh,
Cambridge, kind of on the
uh,
Cambridge-Boston border. So there's the Charles right behind me.
my hometown.
Yep.
Sweet. All right, that looks a little bit better.
So while people are trickling in, I'll tell you a little bit about this book club, kind of who the members are, how it started, just to give you some background. So I started this book club in February 2022, when I'm a psychologist, was really on the front line of seeing how many people were looking for help, were feeling isolated and didn't know where to look. And so I started this Instagram account to help connect people to therapists, and kind of make it a blanket offer to help anyone across the US, and then it trickled into Canada and even the UK as well, connect them to resources to help them. And a lot of people would message me and say, um, I want some guidance, but I'm not ready to, to talk to a therapist. Are there any books that you can point me to? And so that kind of sparked this book club. So every month, we read a different book, and they're not necessarily self-help books. They're books that range quite a bit, talking about relationships, friendships, loneliness. Some have trickled into the world of anxiety and trauma, and more psychologically minded, but kind of we try to cover the full gamut, of anything related to well-being and mental health. Um, and the book club has over 600 members. So some people like to join live, other people like to just read the book, and other people like to watch the discussions after the fact. So just so you know a little bit about this book club, and I want to give you the opportunity. I mean, people I feel like got to know you so well through the book, but just wanted to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and how you got into this world of writing about loneliness and friendship.
Sure. Well, thank you, Sarah. Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for joining. And if you're watching this not live on the replay, whenever that happens, thank you also for taking time out of your busy life and schedule to make time for this conversation around friendship and loneliness. But yeah, so my name's Smiley. I live in San Francisco, California. I grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I've lived in the Bay Area about 10 years, and I've written three books, and the most recent one is called Friendship in the Age of Loneliness. Most of my time is spent speaking and talking to companies around workplace connection, workplace belonging, employee engagement, making employees feel seen and heard, connecting employees, especially in this kind of new world of hybrid, remote, virtual work, and making sure that everyone feels like they're part of something beyond themselves. And this book I actually started writing before the pandemic. It was really interesting. It's a funny story. I have a literary agent, and I was kind of like pitching this idea around writing a book about my own struggles with loneliness and trying to spend more time with my friends in real life in this kind of digital era. And we pitched this book with this title like right at the end of 2019, maybe like January 2020, and they were like, well, like no one's gonna buy a book with loneliness in the title. We like the idea, but like we can't have loneliness in the title. There's such a stigma there. No one wants to admit they're lonely. And I'm like, well, I'm lonely. That's why I'm writing this book out of my own experience, right? And then it was like two months later, and it was the pandemic, and we're like, all right, we can keep the title. Like loneliness is it's okay now because everyone's dealing with it, which I thought was kind of interesting. That was this kind of moment of societal acceptance, even though so many people were struggling with loneliness. And you can look at the data. The U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, just released this report. He wrote a great book called Together, by the way, which I highly recommend everyone read. But the book basically says 1 in 2 Americans are lonely. Half, literally half. And that's current. Um, so this was an issue. This was an epidemic prior to the pandemic. It's only gotten worse, especially for young people, especially for parents. And I basically started writing about it because of my own experience, especially as someone, like my nickname is Smiley. I'm obviously a pretty positive, outgoing guy. I've had that nickname for 25 years. I work as a public speaker. I literally meet people for a living. I'm an extrovert. And if I'm struggling with loneliness, that was kind of my thesis, like, or my impetus for the book was like, if I'm struggling with this, other people definitely are, right? And so you start to dig into the research and you're like, whoa, this is a really big issue that not enough people are talking about. And I think that one silver lining of the pandemic has been to the point of that title being accepted is that also similar to therapy and mental health, more people are willing to have that conversation. More people are talking about loneliness now post COVID than were in 2017, 18, 19, early 2020, which is great, which is important. But I think we only have to keep talking about it more and understand that, especially as we go deeper and deeper into technology being part of how we live, how we work, like that's not changing. That's just, we're on that rocket ship. It's headed wherever it's headed. Like we're not going backwards. And then, thinking about AI and artificial intelligence and all this stuff, that human connection has to be something we put first and foremost in our lives. Because if we don't, I think that the drawbacks are pretty severe. I mean, I'm not an academic. I'm not at Harvard. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a psychologist. I say that very clearly in the book. I bring in some outside research, but what I really wanted to kind of do was give people what I call like a cookbook for modern connection, a cookbook for friendship in the digital age, where you get to pick different recipes. I cite some of the research, which is really jarring, and I encourage any of you, especially that are coming from like the academic or research background, to look at that research. Dr. Vivek Murthy has a lot of great stuff in his book. Julianne Holt-Lunstad, who has done some of the pioneering work on loneliness, but it's pretty jarring. Loneliness is as dangerous to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It literally kills people, correlated with increased anxiety, stress, depression, heart disease, all of these really adverse health outcomes. And I think not the antidote, but one antidote is friendship. And it seems so simple. Like, I have like a line in my book where it's like, we're talking about all of these things you can do to change your life. Like buy a Peloton, do CrossFit, like download a meditation app, go to yoga, see a therapist, all amazing things. Read 15 self-help books, like do a juice cleanse, like drink green juice. You could also just spend more time with your friends. You should do some of those other things as well. But one thing you could do that's actually free, or maybe it costs like, $5 to buy someone an ice cream cone or go out to dinner. Okay, it's not free. And it's certainly a lot of emotional work, but is spend more time with your friends. And like, we don't talk about that as adults. So that was like kind of why I wrote this book, was to remind people that and give them kind of a menu of inspiration, ideas, not to do all of them, but to just pick a couple things to try and spend more time with your friends.
And I think you did such a great job of that. Of so many of these things are so easy, are so attainable, are so like tangible and easily applied. And I think that that's really important because people who feel overwhelmed, whether it's moving to a new city and not knowing where to start, or feeling like they've lost connection with friends, these easy steps that they can take are so important. And I think I appreciated too, from the get-go, really differentiated that there is a clear difference between being alone and being lonely, and that someone can be physically alone but feel emotionally fulfilled, and someone can be surrounded by other people and still feel extremely lonely. And I think that that's a really important differentiation, because as you said several times, it's easy to assume that the people we see as being very social and extroverted are not lonely, and that's not always, or not even, not often the case. Um,
So, yeah, exactly. And I think that that's important. There's the research also, shows the distinction between kind of social
yeah,
isolation, which is like you're not around a lot of people, and loneliness. They're different things, right? They're different experiences. So social isolation is you're removed from people. You may be that by choice. You may be like, I'm a
right.
person, I want to live in a cabin in the woods, I don't want to see people, but for whatever reason, like you feel good and you are like, you're doing fine. That's your thing. There are many people who are socially isolated that feel horribly lonely, right? But it's not the same thing. Whereas loneliness is kind of a subjective feeling. It's like that gap. Julianne Holt-Lunstad talks about this. Like it's the gap between where you perceive your social connection to be and where the level that you want it to be. That's loneliness. And one of the reasons, not the only, there are many reasons, like the kind of, it's hard to find like the causal reasons for loneliness. There are many in our society. Um, but I think, one of them has to be our increased reliance on technology in terms of how we connect. Like if you look at the data around young people, 80% of Gen Z
Yeah,
is lonely. So Gen Z are people born after 1997. So teenagers, people in their kind of their early lives. And everyone thinks young people are the most connected, right? Because they
right.
spend 3 hours a day on TikTok. They're constantly on their phones, right? They're sending emojis and text to people constantly. They're the most lonely. So something is up there. And really, it has to be that, well, that's not social connection.
Right.
It's something like there is an element of you are interacting with someone when playing a video game or sending them an emoji or double tapping their photo, but that's not real, nuanced, deep human connection.
And
And yeah, so that I think is really important for people to remember.
how much of that do you think is a shift from like following people you know on social media to now this huge surge of influencers in which people are often consuming social media to follow people they don't know, and in that way not feeling like they're keeping up with the lives of people they do know? Or do you feel like that's unrelated?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the bigger piece is that, there's some research that shows it takes 90 hours with someone to go from them being someone you like met on the street, and you're like,
Yeah,
what's up? Or you like, like bump into literally,
right.
for them to be go from being a random person to a friend. 90 hours. That's a lot of time. And
Yeah,
it's 200 hours for them to actually be like a homie, like a best
right.
friend, like a really close friend. And that, when I read that data, I was like, whoa, that's so interesting. I think that there's this illusion of connection from social media.
Yeah,
This influencer, I'm in their life, basically. I'm
right.
in their kitchen. I may
Right.
as well be their best friend. Like, they're telling me what products to buy.
Right.
Like, we're close. It's like, no, you're not. You don't know that person at all. It's an illusion. And even with people that we kind of follow and think we know, it's like that's not real human connection. It's something. And I'm not saying that there's not some value there. I actually have a chapter in the book that's like use technology to heal,
Yeah.
which I think is important, like to highlight people that have found communities, whether it's because of a mental health or because of a specific illness or something, a disability, or just an interest where they found people to connect with. But I do think that it's important, especially for young people, that we teach them, whether as
Yeah.
parents or as people in their lives, as teachers, as mentors, as whatever, like go spend time with other
Yeah.
human beings in real life, because the reason you may be, not are, but may be unhappy or unfulfilled is because you're not getting that dopamine from human beings. Like that's what we are meant to do. Like we're wired for human connection. Yeah, so
And among the many tips that you gave, and that I loved how you were incorporating what, tips that other people gave you and advice that you've gotten from friends. I love the emotional bandwidth check scale, disabling push notifications on social media, sending postcards to let people know you're thinking about them. I personally often will go to dinner with friends and we all put our phones in a pile. and don't look at the phones until we're leaving. But like you said, it's also true that the digital world can help unite. So, for example, several years ago when I was working on my dissertation for my PhD, I would have co-working sessions with friends in which we would each get on Zoom or FaceTime or whatever it is and put ourselves on mute and do our own work, but know that the other person was physically present. How do you suggest people evaluate the role of social media in their life and help gauge accurately the ways that it's helping their social connection, the ways that it's hurting it?
Yeah, like I think that this research comes from, I believe it's John Cacioppo who wrote a book called Loneliness. He passed away. Um, but basically, this idea of technology as the way station, not the
Yeah.
destination. So it's like if the social media app, whatever it is, could be Instagram Live, it could be,
Yeah.
Threads, it could be TikTok, it could be your Slack channel, whatever. If that's like where you go and you make a contact with somebody and you find out information, you're doing some learning, and you make a plan to then meet up in real life or to have a phone call. Like it doesn't have to be
Right.
like in person or have a video call. Like that's where you're getting information, and it's the way station on the way to social connection.
Yeah.
Then it can be very, very, very useful. Like the research shows, like, yeah, that can actually be very meaningful. You're learning, you're growing, you're making plans to meet up with someone, you're quote unquote getting off the app. Like, but if it's just the uh, destination and the final, like that's just it. It's just the endless
Yeah.
scroll. It's just the place you go and you never leave. That's not good,
Yeah.
right? Like you have to hop off, and it has to be like a place you find directions, a place you get inspiration, a place you learn something. You find the people you want to talk to, and then you actually go meet up with them. You make a plan to meet up with them. You get in touch with them. You send them a note. Like you say, hey, I really appreciated that. Hey, would you like to chat more? Hey, we should build a business together. Hey, like, you were talking about, this mental health resource. Can I get more information? Like that's where it's valuable. And that's, I think, really important because, yeah, these tools aren't going away. I'm not like a Luddite. I'm not someone that says social media is evil. I use these tools, but the way that they're moving so quickly and so powerfully, and the algorithms that they have, which are designed to keep us scrolling
Yeah.
forever, and they're way more powerful than our brains, like we have to be pretty smart about it. And I think we have to just place a higher um, value on in-person relationships.
And
Um,
along those lines, before I get into questions that people sent in, I'm curious whether you have thoughts on people who primarily hang out in large groups versus people who hang out one-on-one. I would guess that, the importance of one-on-one individualized friendships is really important, but it seems that there are some people who kind of travel in packs and always operate in groups, which I'm sure has its own benefits, but I'm curious your thoughts on that and how, if at all, that contributes to loneliness when you're always in a group versus in individual friendships.
Yeah, I think everyone's different. I don't think there's like a one size fits all for any of this, and I'm hesitant to kind of prescribe
Sure.
like this is the
Yeah.
route or these are the steps. That's not like my philosophy. I'm someone that I think as I've gotten older, I have placed a higher value on one-on-one
Yeah.
relationships. I have a chapter or recipe in the book called Honor the One-on-One.
Yeah.
So it's like when you make plans with someone, one of my biggest pet peeves is when they're like, oh, guess what? I've invited like Cindy and Jonathan and Michael to
Yeah.
come too because I bumped into them in the street. I'm like, I don't want to hang out with them. Like
Yeah.
I made plans with you.
Yeah.
Like that's the point of this dinner. That's the point of my Tuesday evening. Or like I was looking forward to this weekend. Like that's what
Right.
we're doing. Not to say like those people are bad. It's just like that's not what this is. And you didn't ask me. um, and yeah, and I just think that there's something really special about one-on-one time, especially as you get older, you get a little bit busier, you have more commitments when it comes to a partner or family. You have less time, frankly. So I think when I was younger in my 20s and early 30s, for sure, like the big group hangs are kind of, it's almost an extension of kind of
Yeah.
college. It feels safe. It feels familiar. It's easy. It's less pressure, especially for people that might be uh, nervous it's easier maybe to kind of roll with lots of people, feels safer. But I think that for me, as I've gotten older, I've really valued kind of a little bit more personal, deep connection.
Yeah. And related to that, a member of the book club wrote in and said, one of my friends always brings her significant other when we have plans. When I once brought up that I would love to spend time with her alone, she got offended. Do you have any tips on how to navigate this so I can preserve our one-on-one friendship without upsetting her more?
Oh, I love that question, and I think whoever said it, I think it's like a pretty vulnerable thing to share. First of all, I think it's good that you brought it up. I think I think so many people often feel that way, but then they don't express it. I think if you do it from a place of love, being like, I love your partner, I want to see them too, and I
Yeah.
want to create a specific time for us to spend time together. It's not like, so, because sometimes that can often come off as, I don't care about your
Right.
partner and I never want to see them.
Right.
All I care about is our friendship. But if it comes from a place of, I totally want to get to know your partner better, have time, the three of us or four of us or whatever it is, great. But also, it's like a yes and. It's like, I also really want to value our relationship. And I think it's fair to say, like, for people, when we have a close friend that gets into a relationship, especially if we're not in a relationship, that
Yeah.
can feel, there's a lot that comes up. There might be jealousy, there might be envy, there might be just feeling like you missed someone that was really available for you and they're not available as much, and you see, them with somebody else. To be able to kind of say like, hey, I miss our time together, I miss being with you, I want to value that relationship. So it's coming out of a place of that, not out of a place of dislike or
Yeah.
distaste or anger towards the partner.
Yeah. I totally agree that it's in the delivery, and perhaps suggesting other times when the three of you can all hang out is good to show, it's about a balance.
It's also
Um,
really healthy.
yeah.
Just another point here, I
Yeah.
think just kind of like, most of probably your book club and are familiar with Esther Perel's work, but kind of this idea of like your partner, it's also healthy for that person to
Yeah.
not be spending it,
Yeah.
to not be relying on their
Yeah.
partner for everything, and to keep those relationship with friends. I think it's really hard to do this, but the healthiest relationships, both people still had deep, deep
Yeah.
one-on-one connections
Yeah.
with their friends that they knew before they met their partner. Not saying that's easy, especially as you get older, especially with children, especially for families, just because of time and life commitments. But I see that the people that seem to be thriving in their relationships really are good about like, no, no,
Yeah.
you go hang out with your buddy, you go hang out with your girlfriends, you go hang out with your boyfriends, you go hang out with
Yeah.
whoever, your people. I want you to do that because I need that time too.
Yeah.
um, it's hard to do, but I think it's really important.
Yeah. And somewhat related to that, and you touched on this a little bit in the book. Someone else wrote in, I want to connect with I want to connect with my friends more frequently, but it feels like they're in different life stages than I am. Most are married and many have kids, and I'm still single. Do you have any advice for how to overcome this discomfort with being in a different place and find ways to connect, even when I can't relate to diapers and in-laws? And then some, like other people wrote in kind of the opposite of, I'm a new parent and a lot of my friends don't have kids, and someone else wrote in, I feel like all of my friends still want to go out and I'm not in that stage, so there are many different iterations. And I know you touched on this in the book, but do you mind speaking a little bit about how to form that connection when people feel like they have different interests or, are in different places than their friends?
Yeah, I think it's a very common feeling. And I think it's important to name it. I think that when the stuff goes unsaid is when that's when it gets icky. I think just bringing that up is totally fine to say, like, hey, I have a newborn at home. Like, I'm not going out. We're not leaving the apartment at Saturday at 10 p.m. Are you like, what are you
Right.
thinking? Like, I literally can't do that. Like, I got 3 hours of sleep last night. That's not going to happen. Um, but I think especially also like you have to recognize for whoever the person is, like people change. Like that is part of being
Yeah.
a friend is actually when your friends are evolving and growing is kind of recognizing that and accepting
Yeah.
that and being there for them to the extent that you can, and also kind of acknowledging shifting needs. Like that's part of being an adult. Like things don't stay the same, right? Like people are not who they were when they were
Yeah.
22 or 28 or 38. Like that's just not how it is. And also sometimes we move on from friends or we kind of
Yeah.
have a little bit of a separation and maybe we
Yeah.
come back because we move across the country or and then maybe we end up back in the same place and the friendship becomes even closer than it was before. Things change, things evolve. I think specifically I put the burden when it comes to the parents thing, and I don't yet have children, so this has been something that I've experienced a lot. I think it's on the burden of the person that doesn't have kids to kind of show up a little bit more for their
Yeah.
friends that do. That's just the reality. Like,
Yeah.
as some, like when I'm just seeing my sister and her two children and many of my close friends that have young kids, like they need the help.
Yeah.
And frankly, when it comes to the planning, when it comes to cooking, when it comes to just getting crap done around the house, like to the extent that you can just be there to show up and
Yeah.
lend a hand or just drop some food off or just tell them you love them or whatever,
Yeah.
like that's good. And I think that that has to be on you because of just the nature of how hard it is to
Yeah.
be a parent and childcare in this, at least in the United States, which is just a not great situation.
Yeah.
We just don't support parents very well on any level. Um, so that's, I think, important. But I also think, for parents, like, you talk to them, it's also very healthy for them to kind of, if they can, to kind of continue to nurture those
Yeah.
relationships with their friends that are child free. So it's both ways, and I think it takes patience, frankly, intention, and probably messing up once or twice in
Yeah.
order to kind of. And there's not like a right answer or right way. I think it's just like we figure it out. It's messy. That's
And
friendship.
I think too, and I'm curious your thoughts that like different friends have different roles in your life. And those roles can fluctuate, right? They're not static roles, and that, it's okay to have a friend that you check in with a couple times a year and just let them know you're thinking about them. And it's okay to have a friend who you know every detail about their life, and that, it's important not to take these things personally when you feel like someone's not reaching out, because you never know what they're going through, and you never know, you never know. And that if you're feeling distant from someone, there's no harm in ever saying, I'm thinking about you, and opening the door so that if they are overwhelmed by being a new parent, they can say, name it, and providing the space for that.
Totally. And I cite in the book a friend of mine who's a therapist, actually, an incredible therapist, and she's done a lot of great thought leadership. Dr. Emily Onholt, she has a line. She started an organization called COA, which is like a kind of, you probably are familiar with it,
My
Sarah.
the
Oh,
Yeah, where I work, we actually partner with COA,
okay.
so
Yeah, COA is
I know
great.
COA very well.
But she has this phrase like don't ask, just help. And it's this idea of like even like saying like what do you need or
Yeah.
what do you want to do for a new parent that like that's too
Yeah.
much work, too much labor, too much logistical pressure. The idea would be to just literally show up with the food.
Yeah.
And if they don't need it or they've already eaten, they'll put it in the fridge or they'll freeze it or whatever. Or you
Yeah.
just like, hey, I thought you might need this. Hey, I thought you might need flowers. Hey, I thought you might need a note. You just help. And you ask people when they're not in a moment of stress, like things that they care about or things that they love, so that you can just show up in the
Yeah.
periods when they are really stressed or tired or sick. I thought that was really special
Yeah.
and a small but important thing
Yeah.
that is useful.
Someone I found this to be, an interesting question. Um, I have tried several of the strategies you've suggested with regards to reaching out to people when I think of them. But I find that I reach out to people much more frequently than people reach out to me. This often leaves me feeling lonelier, as
Mm.
it makes me feel like my friendships are unequal. Do you have any tips on how to help either my interpretation of the situation or how to help this cycle? This is a very, very vulnerable and I think interesting question.
Yeah, that is vulnerable. Thank you for that person for sharing. I think that's very personal. I think I've experienced that too. I think that there are cases, like let's be real, where hey, maybe you and that person are in different places, right? If you are reaching out to hang out with someone a couple times, like in the span of a month or two, and they're not responding, or it's 3, 4 months, and like you're reaching out and you don't hear from them, like that might be a reason to kind of put that, like to kind of pull back a little bit, and that friendship is on hold or on pause for a little bit. Let's be real, like that's a reality, and it might be like an opportunity to kind of meet some new people or to re-engage with someone you haven't spoken to in a while. And there also might be like we just don't always know what people are going through.
Right.
Like we're like, oh my gosh, they ignored my text. It's like, yeah, they have COVID. Or like,
Right.
oh my gosh, they have a final. Or they just got fired. They just literally got laid off from work. They don't want to tell you. They don't want to tell anyone. They're embarrassed. They feel horrible. They don't know what the hell they're going to do, how they're going to pay rent next month. Like, you caught them at a bad time, chill out.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like we just don't always know. So there's a little element of kind of figuring that out. And I think that there are some of us, like some people are, very good about the check-ins.
Yeah.
Like there's some people in my book that are like, almost essentially keep a spreadsheet of like
Yeah.
who they've kept track with, when's the last
Yeah.
time they reached out,
Yeah.
what the preferred method of communication is. And then some people are like, if like unless it's like literally someone's like, you need to go pay your credit card bill or like, clean the bathroom, they're never going to do anything in their life. So we have to kind of meet people where they are sometimes. I also do think like maybe some element with that is knowing what someone's preferred method of
Yeah.
connection is. Because I know people who are really bad at correspondence. They're just not good at that. But if I'm ever like, I need to talk to you, can we meet up? Like they'll make it happen, right? Like, or we might not talk for a long
Yeah.
time, but when we do finally meet up, they are so loving, so kind, so
Yeah.
generous, so warm, so supportive. That friendship still is so valuable to me,
Yeah.
even if they're not the person that's like daily check-ins or that's not how some people are going to roll. So it's kind of figuring that out, and um, again, it's messy.
Yeah. And someone else wrote in, I'm jumping around because there were such disparate questions. Someone else wrote in, I don't have trouble making friends, but I struggle to keep in touch with them. It seems that whenever I move to a new city or enter a new phase of life, I lose touch with people. It leaves me feeling like I have no friends, as it feels like everyone else moves on without me. I worry that making a friend map would leave me feeling worse because I don't know if people in my past still consider me their friends. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, that's another really sweet and vulnerable question. Um, yeah, one thing that I would just say, like from my research in the book, is um, first of all, you're not alone. Like a lot of people feel this way. Um, I think that there's such a emphasis in our society on like you need so many friends, so many connections. Like, if you just think about the way that social media apps are designed, it's like how
Yeah,
many friends do you have, how many followers,
yeah,
like it's a number. And the research really shows that it's actually like you don't need that many
yeah,
friends. Actually, you literally from the research, you can't have more than 150 people in your life. That's like that you can actually keep in touch with. Like
right,
literally, that's it. Like you literally as a human being
right.
can't actually stay in very good contact with more than 150 people. Dunbar's number is called. Um, the 150 is still a lot, but like
Yeah,
meaning 3, 4, 5 people in your life that you care about is enough for a very
yeah,
meaningful, connected life. If you have deep, close relationships with those people, it's like almost like less is more. It's all about the quality of the connections, not the amount. So I would say that like, and I think about, I don't regret that friend of map exercise. I think it's a still powerful thing, especially for people that have lived in different places in the world to kind of see where people are and map it out. And also just to kind of maybe there's one person in there like, oh my gosh, I love that person and we haven't been in touch.
yeah,
But I do agree that there's a little bit of a making that kind of some kind of quantity that feels a little icky or something, and I apologize if that was like kind of the result. I could see how that would happen. But again, I would say that it's less about the number and more it's like if there's one person on that map that you care about, celebrate that one person this
Yeah.
month. If there's two
Yeah.
people, like that's beautiful. Like many people have nobody, right? Like
Yeah.
what a beautiful gift that we get to have anybody in our lives that we care about, that we want to celebrate, that we want to spend time with. Like that's okay. And if we don't, also many people feel that way too. There are so many tools and resources out there to kind of meet new people, whether it's in
Yeah.
person, whether it's digitally. Let that be an opportunity to kind of to re-engage and reconnect and try something new.
Yeah. And you had that like mini section, I guess, on different ways that people can meet people, whether it's apps or websites or groups that, I know I passed on um, the ideas to clients and people I know. How, I think some people are want to engage in those kinds of activities, but are confined with social anxiety. Um, and the idea of going to a meetup or going on Bumble BFF and, putting yourself out there seems nice in theory, but is really intimidating. And I think it's easy for people to say, well, anyone attending those events also wants to meet people, right? But again, it's so much easier said than done. What do you think a small step that someone who feels confined, whether it's, actual diagnosable social anxiety or some, spectrum of social anxiety or something else, what's a small actionable step that someone can take toward putting themselves out there and attending one of these events or, joining one of these apps?
Yeah, great question. I think you said the kind of phrase that I was going to use was start small. Like it doesn't not going to happen overnight. It's about those baby action steps. And I would say like let's put because it's this person, we're saying is maybe has some social anxiety. Like what are things that they already enjoy doing?
Yeah.
So, okay, like maybe going to that meetup sucks, but like, what are the things that in your life or interests that you have that you actually do like doing, do want to be doing, and how can we connect with people in that realm? So, like, we're already in a place that's comfortable. We're already, and that could be online,
Right.
right? That could be, gaming. That could be making music. That could be, someone who's into film, whatever, right? Someone who's on
Right.
a specific Reddit thread, whatever. Starting with kind of like the area or an interest or some hobby or something that you enjoy doing and finding a way to connect with someone in that so that we're starting from a place of this is maybe outside your comfort zone, but it's also
Yeah.
adjacent to
Yeah.
something that actually does give you joy or meaning or comfort that you actually already
Yeah.
are into. That's where it becomes a little bit hard is like when people um, they don't want to go to anything like they don't want to go to a meetup or they don't want to be proactive and they can't kind of find things that they're actually really excited about. Then there's a little bit of element of stuck because it's hard. You kind of have to find those inroads. You have to kind of do that digging.
Yeah. And related to that, I think I can't remember if it was I think it was a friend who does this, who whenever I'll say you because you espouse the wisdom in the book, like meet someone new, you have an invitation for the next thing already set up. Is,
Oh, yes.
do you know what I'm
I'll share
referring to?
that. Yeah, that's my friend Sahar, who I think Martin was on this live. He knows Sahar. Sahar has this thing called it's like a phrase called like always go on a second
Yeah.
date, which is a phrase I think many people that are dating
Right.
coaches or people that are kind of into relationships kind of espouse as well. But it's this idea that basically like if you meet someone and they're not if you meet someone and they don't make you feel good or they make you feel unsafe, like walk the other way, get away from them. Like you don't there's enough people in the
Right.
world. Don't talk to them ever again. But if you meet someone and they're like seem pretty interesting or seem somewhat cool or somewhat like someone you want to talk to, like make a plan to hang out with them again. And he has this thing where basically he holds like a monthly potluck and anyone he's met, anytime he meets someone interesting, he has a business card, but all it says is his name and his phone number and let's be friends on it, right? So that's it's like a friend card, friendship card. He gives it to someone he meets, and he invites them to his next monthly potluck. Pretty lo-fi, like yes, you have to host something, but people are bringing the food. You
Right.
maybe have to buy some chips and whatever, but pretty simple. And the idea being, he gets to invite other people that he's met that month and just some other friends. And it's just an easy way of kind of always having that thing because sometimes what's hard about connection is that the planning becomes
Yeah.
things get stuck in the planning, like especially for people that are busy and working
Yeah.
or have partners and families. It's like, oh, so nice to meet you. We should hang out sometime. Yeah, great. Let me get your number. And it's like, okay, are you going to text them, reach out? Okay, they're out of town. You're sick. Their kid's sick.
Right.
A month or two goes by, and it's like it's pretty hard to re-engage after that. So it's just something that kind of gets the ball rolling. I have a kind of a thing in the book that says put friendship on the calendar, just because we're so busy that if we don't, it kind of goes by the wayside. Like we have to put our hangs on the calendar.
Yeah.
So that I like that anecdote from Sahar. I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah, and it relates to a question that someone wrote in about, but first related to that, I got a kick out of that because um I have mixed thoughts on New Year's resolutions, but made like some commitments for the year. And one of them was to randomly throughout the year put random days on my calendar that were dedicated to socializing and put random days on my calendar that were dedicated to not socializing and doing that in advance to be committed
Mm,
to both like having that dedicated time to spend time alone and also that dedicated time to socialize and not leaving it up until the moment because in the moment it can be so easy to get caught up in things and think that it's too hard to make that time, but committing to that I think is so important. Someone had written in saying I've pretty actively tried to make friends through things like Bumble BFF. Often I find people will not respond or will make vague plans to meet up and never follow through. Which relates a little bit to what you were saying that people get so caught up in their lives. Do you have any advice on how to ensure that people actually meet in person?
yeah, I think the follow-up is good. I think like having a clear, like Sahar, kind
Yeah,
of that clear kind of ask right off the bat so that you don't go into this like,
yeah,
we should hang out sometime. Like, what is that really? It's like that gets to be vague. It's like, are we getting coffee? Is it a daytime thing? Is it a weekend thing? Similar actually to dating, where it's like it. I think one time someone gave me the advice of like you should just have a first date that
yeah,
you know the place. You can say, do you want to go for a walk in the
yeah,
your whatever the park is that you like most walking in, or get an ice cream, whatever it is. That's something that is the reason being not that that is a little bit repetitive, but it's that it's comfortable and
yeah,
it's a go-to. And hey, it was really nice meeting you. Like we should hang out sometime. Like I want to be friend. Like I'm looking for more friends. Like, do you want to meet up at this coffee shop? Like, or I know the best place to get, matcha latte, or I don't know, whatever. Like, whatever. Like, hey, I'm really into pickleball these days. Do you want to go play pickleball? Like, hey, like, do you want to go for a run sometime? Or I know the place to go on this nice hike. Whatever it is that you're into, having one or two of those things that kind of are kind of go-tos, I think are nice. Um, that would be one suggestion. But when you're just meeting new people, I think a little bit is you got to feel it out. Like you
yeah,
don't, like part of that is the conversation around what is this person into? What are they excited about? That's why I think like going to um, my friend Marissa Franco talks about this a lot. This is like going to things that are ongoing,
yeah,
right? And like the proximity effect, where it's like the more time you spend with people, the more likely you're going to build those connections.
yeah,
So if you can, instead of go like kind of, well, meeting people on the street, it happens, that's great. And I have some great stories in the book of that. But if you're part of something that's
yeah,
ongoing, right? Like, a fellowship program, or you take a class, a cooking
right,
class, or you sign up for a book club or something
right,
where it's like, or you host a book club, or you're part of some sort of like health, fitness, exercise
right,
meetup, whatever. Because then it's like, okay, the first time you meet, you're just like, you're cool. Nice to see you. Can't wait to see you again. Second time, you're like, oh my gosh, I have two kids too. Like, let's talk about how much being a parent is
Yeah.
crazy. Boom. Oh my gosh, you love, you just keep learning new things about people, which gives you then those wait, oh, we should do that together. We should do that together. We should do that together. Versus kind of the one-off thing where basically it's pretty overwhelming and hard to kind of get that information in an hour or 2 hours, right? So anything that you can do to kind of find things that are repeating and ongoing, where you're going to be seeing the same person maybe, over the span of a month or two, that's pretty fun.
Yep. One question, maybe our last question, and this is, I'm sure, a complicated one, but what what are some early warning signs that people can look for as a way to realize that they're entering into a really bad state of loneliness? I think everyone's lonely from time to time, and I've had people ask me, so if I feel lonely for a couple days, is that going to be as detrimental to my health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day? And I want to differentiate that it's the chronic loneliness that,
Yes.
the normalized feeling lonely from time to time, and it's the chronic loneliness. And so, because we don't want people to wait until they're in that period of chronic loneliness, what are some early warning signs that people can be looking out for?
Yeah, that's a great question. To me, the thing that I think feels the most like alarming, where I would recommend someone seek to see a professional like yourself, or therapist or mental health professional, is like when the loneliness is so bad that you don't want to see other people.
Yeah,
That feels to me, where it feels like that's where it gets to be a little bit, someone is expressing loneliness, but then can't physically or kind of emotionally connect with other people or make
yeah,
that step to go to an event, or they get invited to a friend's birthday and they're feeling lonely, but they then just don't go. You're like, whoa, like, but you got invited to the friend's birthday. Like,
yeah,
th- that's the very place you should be. Or like someone reached out and you're not worth connecting back. Like, that's when I think that, and to be also, there are periods where we're all gonna have
yeah,
those low moments or those
yeah,
weeks or those nights where we're like I'm not texting that person back. Like I'm binging, Ted Lasso on Netflix. Like I don't have time for this. But I mean more like where that's an ongoing thing where
yeah,
like your people are repeatedly reaching out and you don't have the ability, you like it's like somewhere you're like I know I want to, like I know I should, but that you physically can't get out of the house, you can't go spend time with other people, or you can't express to your friends that you care about them. That feels to me like a warning sign that
yeah,
something's up, and luckily there are people that out there that can help you with this stuff. And just like you're not alone. Like
yeah,
that's what I think the most powerful thing I really realized, and why I'm so grateful that I wrote this book, both for myself and other people, is that, there's so many, everyone is dealing with this in some capacity. But look, the research, one in two,
right,
1 in 2 Americans are lonely, and also loneliness is
yeah,
skyrocketing across the globe. Like you're not alone. And I just think that's really important. And I think as we go deeper and deeper into technology, kind of being first, like how we live, how we work, this is only going to get worse. And just to remind ourselves that everyone's doing their best, and this is an ongoing kind of journey, and that we need sometimes we really do need to help to work with professionals, and that we're going to have those moments where we need help.
yeah. And then last question that I ask everyone is, what are you reading right now?
Oh, great question. I just read this awesome book, called Cloud Cuckoo Land. It's fiction. Have you heard of it?
No, I
It's by the
haven't.
same author, Anthony Doerr. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He wrote the book All the Light We Cannot See, which is I think it was like a Pulitzer
Yeah,
Prize winning fiction book. So, Cloud Cuckoo Land is his follow-up book. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's like these 6 different stories interconnected from all the way from like Constantinople in 1400 to the future. It's so cool. It's
super cool.
beautiful and inspiring and sad and lovely all at the same time.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your book, and I know a bunch of people wrote in saying that they did too. And I really appreciate your wisdom and your tips and your coming to speak to the group.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks to everyone that was on the live, and thanks for everyone that's listening to the recording.
Have a good night. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.